So picture this. It's July 2024. A student protest that starts over something as seemingly mundane as government job quotas suddenly spirals into a full-blown revolution. And in just 36 days, these student-led demonstrations managed to topple a government that had been in power for 15 years. We're going to dive into the story of how one student's act of defiance became a symbol for an entire nation, and how a regime's desperate attempts to hold on to power ended up being its own undoing. All right, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the spark that lit the whole fire. Then, we'll zoom in on one student's final defiant stand. After that, we'll uncover the anatomy of the state's attempted cover-up and witness the brutal crackdown they called Operation Clean Down. Then, we'll watch as the government falls, and finally, we'll explore the ongoing and very difficult fight for justice. So how on earth did this all begin? You know, it all kicked off with something that sounds, well, kind of dry on the surface, a dispute over a job quota system. But for students all across Bangladesh, this wasn't just about bureaucracy. It was about a fundamental question of fairness and their future. So this system, right, it wasn't always so controversial. The original idea was to honor the heroes of the nation's 1971 Independence War, which makes sense. But fast forward a few decades, and you've got a whole new generation of students saying, hey, wait a minute, this isn't really about honor anymore. They felt it was giving an unfair advantage to a select few, totally sidelining qualified candidates who should be judged on merit. So you'd think the government might try to, hear the students out. But no. Instead of addressing their concerns about fairness, the prime minister at the time, Sheikh Hasina, completely reframed the debate. She brought up the Rajakars, the collaborators who sided against Bangladesh in the war. By doing this, she basically drew a line in the sand, painting the protesters not as students fighting for a fair shot, but as enemies of the nation's founding principles. And just like that, the tension went through the roof. Okay, so we've got this massive, nationwide movement brewing, but now we're going to zoom way in on one person and one single pivotal moment. This is where the story of the protests takes a turn, and there's no going back. This is the story of Abu Sayed. So this is Abu Sayed, just a regular student, really, studying English, described by his friends as a kind, good-hearted person. But his final moments, which were captured on video and went viral, would transform him from just another student into a powerful symbol, inspiring millions to demand real change.
And those were his words. Shoot me, shoot me. Imagine the scene. Armed police are advancing, students are retreating, and Abu Sayed turns around to face them, all by himself. He just opens his arms, literally presenting his chest as a target, and issues this challenge. A challenge that would echo across the entire country.
And it all happened so fast. As police moved in, witnesses say Abu Sayed, who was already bleeding from the chaos, turned back to try and rally the others. That's when he shouted his challenge, and an officer shot him right in the chest at point-blank range. So Abu Sayed's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a PR nightmare for the state, especially because it was all caught on camera. And their immediate reaction? Damage control. A frantic, systematic effort to hide what really happened and rewrite the entire story. Right away, you've got two completely different stories. The official police claim was that Sayed died from a head injury, something caused by objects thrown by other protesters. But the doctor's autopsy told a totally different, undeniable story. It was a homicide caused by multiple shotgun wounds. The two stories just couldn't both be true. And the person caught right in the middle of this was the forensic doctor Bhaban Kumar. He later said that senior police officials were all over him, demanding he change the report. They told him to just focus on the head injury and ignore the gunshots. And when he wouldn't budge, they tried a different approach. They actually tried to bribe him. Think about that for a second. An all-expenses-paid family vacation to Thailand. Basically anything to get him to sign off on the lie. But he refused. He ended up rewriting his official findings 5 separate times to make sure he could withstand the pressure and get the truth on record. It was an incredible act of courage, and it was crucial in exposing the whole cover-up. Well, the cover-up failed. The truth about Abu Sayed's killing was out, and people were absolutely furious. the protests grew larger and more intense, so the government decided to double down. Hard. Their response escalated into a full-scale, coordinated, and brutal crackdown. And then, this audio leaks. The voice is alleged to be Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's, and the command is absolutely chilling. Go and shoot them below the waist. It basically confirmed what everyone on the streets already feared, that the violence wasn't random. It was a deliberate strategy, ordered from the very top. And they gave this crackdown a name: Operation Clean Down. Look at the tools they used here. This wasn't just police with batons. We're talking drone surveillance, helicopter attacks, widespread internet blackouts to stop people from communicating, and of course, live ammunition on the ground. This was a sophisticated, modern assault on their own citizens. You'd think all of that force would have stopped the protests, right? But it did the exact opposite. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire. The anger over the killings and the cover-up just galvanized the entire population, turning a student protest into an unstoppable force that was about to bring down the whole government. And the end, when it came, happened incredibly fast. I mean, just look at this timeline. On day 1, Abu Sayyad's death goes viral and sparks outrage. By day 25, and this is the key moment, the military basically signals it's not going to fire on the citizens. Just 11 days after that, the prime minister is gone, flees the country. It's stunning. So what was the real tipping point? It was the army. The word coming from inside the military leadership was essentially, these are our people. Our ammunition is paid for by their taxes to protect them, not to shoot them. Once the army refused to be the government's enforcer, it was game over. They lost their last line of defense. And once the army stepped back, that was it. The floodgates opened. There was nothing left to stop the people. Hundreds of thousands marched on the capital and just stormed the Gana Bhavan, the prime minister's official residence, the ultimate symbol of her power. The regime had fallen. So, the government is gone. Victory, right? Well, not exactly. The story doesn't just end there. Because for the families of the hundreds killed and the thousands injured, a new, much more personal battle was just getting started. A fight for actual accountability and justice. In a last-ditch effort just before she fled, Sheikh Hasina met with some of the victims' families, including Abu Sayyad's, and offered them financial compensation. But his family said it didn't feel like compassion. To them, it felt like a cold, calculated PR stunt. An attempt to create a public story that they had settled, that their grief was taken care of. It made them feel terrible. And this is where it gets really human. It's easy to talk about numbers and politics, but the real cost of this revolution is in stories like this one. A father recalling his last ever phone call with his daughter, Nafisa. With chaos all around her, she told him, "I won't come home until we get a result." She said if she achieved victory, praise be to God. If not, she said, "You will know." Minutes later, she was shot and killed. These are the voices behind the headline. And that really brings us to the big, difficult question that's hanging over all of this. A new government might come, sure. The symbols of the old regime are gone. But for the people who paid the ultimate price, and for the families they left behind, will there ever be true justice? Can there be real accountability for what happened? And maybe, in the end, it all comes down to this simple, powerful plea from one of the victim's family members. It's a hope that's born from just immense pain. The hope that the sacrifice of Abu Sayyad and Nafisa and so many others will mean that a fight for justice in Bangladesh never has to be paid for with blood again.